Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of film, dance, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I am honored, truly honored, to have as my guest on Creative Focus one of the most respected names in the film industry, casting director, Miss Lillian Pyles. Miss Lillian, welcome to Creative Focus, girl. Let's chop it up.
Thank you. I like that intro. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Am I going to get a part?
Absolutely.
So, 30 years in New York City, 5 years in Hollywood, and we're going to talk about those Hollywood years.
Okay.
Just an extraordinary career, impressive resume, working with iconic directors, Spike Lee, Denzel Washington, Gordon Parks, Francis Ford Coppola, Forrest Whitaker. You started out as a production coordinator,
Yes.
working with iconic films like Do the Right Thing, New Jack City, working with production companies, Paramount, Sony, Fox Searchlight, NBC, HBO, Showtime, Lifetime, and Netflix. Girl, you just did it all. I'm just so honored to have you here. So how did that start out for you? I mean, how did you get an interest in films? Where did that come from?
Went to New York when I was 19. When I graduated from high school, I enrolled at Tri-C, majored in fun, and then decided to get a job. One of the big airlines, they were told, EEOC told them that they started hiring people of color. So they hired me and another young lady, and they weren't the nicest people to work for. So one day they just said the wrong thing to me and I left. I went home, packed a bag, called my friends in New York and said, I'm coming to visit. I went for 2 weeks and stayed for 30 years. It hooked me. New York is so fabulous and there's so much energy there. Went to school, went to NYU, majored in a business course, then graduated from that course and went on to FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology. I wanted to be in advertising. So I had a good friend who was a production office coordinator. His name was Harry Caldwell, and he hired me as his assistant. I had never worked on a film before. I had no idea what to do. He taught me the work. He taught it to me. And so it was on-the-job training. I worked. First job was secretary, production secretary, then assistant coordinator, and then I became a coordinator.
And what actually does the coordinator do in terms of the film?
Coordinator is the liaison between the crew and the cast. The coordinator, everything filters through the coordinator, everything, all the schedules, all the payroll. I knew what every job was. I knew what everybody's responsibilities were. That's what a coordinator does.
And I also noticed that, and I'm dating myself, but I don't care. I also noticed that you work with Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
on a project. Tell us something about that.
That was just so fascinating. I was in between movies. In New York, they have agencies that find you jobs, part-time jobs in the industry while you're waiting for your movies to start or end.
Right.
And Shin Sam and Associates was the PR firm that handled Elizabeth exclusively. So they needed someone to come in and do some typing for, they're getting ready to go on tour for her Passion for Men, Cologne. So it was just a one-day job. And I came in, I knocked the work out. I was very efficient, I was very good, thank you. And they asked me to come back the next day and come back the next day. Then I helped them prepare for the tour, and Shin Sam told me, now you're not gonna go on the tour, so you're just gonna work here and your job will be over tomorrow. I ended up going on the entire tour. DC, New York, LA. It was fabulous. It was all first class limousines, first class plane. It was just wonderful. And each State, I coordinated the party, the door. I did my coordinating thing. So that's how I worked for Elizabeth Taylor. She was fabulous.
You know what? I remember every time Elizabeth Taylor was in a movie, my parents went. Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton. Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton.
Yes.
And I remember they did a movie called Boom. And I remember my mother and father went to see it. And when they came home, my sister and I, we were about 10 and 8. And we asked my mother, we said, hey, how was it? And my mother didn't say anything for a minute. And then she just said, boom. And because at that time, there weren't that many black actors, prominent actors on screen. What you had, maybe Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, maybe Dorothy Dandridge. And then not often did we have the opportunity to see them. So Elizabeth Taylor was big. That's just incredible that you had that experience with her.
She was wonderful.
Yeah, incredible.
She was kind, she was funny, she was amusing, she was polite, she was graceful. She was a pleasure.
And I still remember her in Cat on the Hot Tin Roof with Paul Newman. So, Miss Lillian, you were voted into the CSA, the Casting Society of America, the most prominent organization for casting theater, film, and television. I mean, that is just an incredible honor. So now, how does that work in terms of vote? Is it because they take the amount of films you do, or how does that work? How does that whole process work?
All the above. You have to have references. You got to have an extensive resume. You got to have so many years in the business.
Okay.
And I did.
Okay.
I did, and I'm going to tell you, it was one of the greatest honors of my life to be admitted into that organization.
Yeah, it is.
It really was.
It is. So what inspired you then to go into casting from the assistant production coordinator to the production coordinator? Was that just the next step, or how did that work?
I was in Hollywood working in films as a coordinator, and I decided to move back to Cleveland. My parents were getting older, and I wanted to be closer to them. When I lived in New York, they were there all the time, and I was here all the time.
Okay.
But LA is a little far.
Sure.
So I moved back to Cleveland, not looking for anything in particular. I just wanted to be near my family. And my brother was with Ford Model Agency here in Cleveland, and he introduced me to the director, Karen Fields, to work. I wasn't looking for a modeling job. I was looking for a job, anything. And she offered me a job as a casting director, casting extras for a TV movie. And this is really funny, she had already hired someone when she met me. And she said that she really regretted hiring somebody else. She was sorry she hadn't met me previously. Okay. And she told me, she said, give me a couple of days and I'll get back to you. And 2 days later, she called and said I had the job. I had never cast anything in my life. But as a coordinator, I knew what a casting director did.
Okay.
So she gave me an office. She gave me about 5 or 6 interns, and we cast extras for that movie. Then Alan Schechter, who was the producer, hired me for his next movie, and that's how I got.
And so do you happen to remember the first movie that you were responsible for casting?
I think it was. It was a Renegade Force.
Okay.
And it was, that's how I met Mr. Billups.
Okay.
Renegade Force was a movie about renegade police. So I booked all the police in Cleveland. I booked the SWAT team. I booked firemen. And I used the actual people because it saved us money because they already had their uniforms.
Okay, I got a casting question for you.
Okay.
So how important, I should say, do you think it is for an actor to dress the part prior to an audition?
Extremely important. It's the visual.
Okay.
It's the visual. You're reading for a certain role, you come appropriate. The appropriate language, the appropriate outfit. It helps you to get in the groove of what they're doing. It helps you to see them better when they're dressed accordingly.
And what is one thing that an actor must know prior to an audition? What are some things that are important for that actor to be successful in that audition in your eyes?
They need to know their lines. They don't come in reading your phone. Don't come in with paper, because I give you enough notice that you can learn what it is that you're reciting. And also to be on time, to be polite, to be respectful. Don't give me excuses. Well, I didn't have time, or I didn't mean to wear this, I didn't have time to do. I don't want to hear any of that. You know up front, like we have a saying, tell me up front so I don't stick out behind. You already know exactly what I expect, so don't come in trying to change that. And it's simple. You know, I give you rules and regulations, all you have to do is follow.
Okay, let's take a look at a film called Welcome to Collinwood. Remember that? We're gonna take a look at a trailer from Welcome to Collinwood.
How much money did you wake up with in your pocket this morning?
55 cents.
If you're going to lead a life of crime, you better know what you're doing.
Do you know Leon?
You fellas know Ronnie?
You guys know Perro?
Did we know a safecracker?
This is the story of a heist. 300 G's sitting in the safe. The plan was simple.
I teach the circular saw method.
He says it could be his Bellini.
Malinsky?
Bellini.
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 Bellini. Malinsky.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
For $500, I show you how to do it.
What could possibly go wrong?
He bit off his tongue.
William H. Macy,
Baby coming through. Baby freaking coming through.
Michael Jeter, Sam Rockwell,
I'm so pretty.
Patricia Clarkson, Isaiah Washington, Jennifer Esposito,
So you're going to ask me out or what?
Luis Guzman, and George Clooney.
Why are you dressed like a priest? You're an idiot.
In a story about a beautiful crime
Got a match?
in a beautiful place. Welcome to Collinwood.
This Bellini is starting to look like a real Kapuchnik.
You know, I selected that film because of Collinwood. Is there anything that you remember about casting that film?
Yeah. They needed some flavor. It's called flavor.
Flavor.
They needed some flavor. Because there was a scene in Welcome to Collinwood where there was a scene in a neighborhood, and it was 4 or 6 corners facing in the street. And they wanted different ethnicity on each corner. They wanted redheads on this corner. They wanted blacks on this corner. They wanted Spanish on this corner. So I was able to give that to them. That was one of the, one of the standout points of that movie. I mean, besides it being good,
right,
and working with some incredible actors, it was a lot of fun. You know, it was in a neighborhood, so we were able to book a lot of the people in the neighborhood. So it was a pretty cool film.
So when you're casting for a film, for a play, and you ask someone to do some improv, so you can see whether or not, what are you looking for in improvisation if you were to ask somebody to do an improvisational piece?
Imagination. Just, you know, I say, okay, you're so-and-so, be that person, or be that animal, or be that whatever. Improv is a skill, but it's in your heart and it's in your head. And all you have to do is realize what you're improving of and just do it. It's very, very simple.
When you take a project and you have a certain idea of a character, how often can an actor change your mind? So in other words, if you have your idea about a character in a particular film, and then you see an actor who may not necessarily be what the character that you had envisioned, how often does that happen where an actor could change your mind and say, hey, wait a minute, you know what, maybe I can go this way?
It happens all the time.
Wow.
It happens all the time. It really does. And my associates always say I take too long in my auditions, and they're always timing me because I like to work with people and help them fall into the role that they're in their auditioning for. And oftentimes I'll see a person and I'll say, wow, you know, I think you should read for so-and-so. Here are the sides, go outside, you know, go over them and come back. It happens all the time.
Okay, so now tell me about Hollywood. What is Hollywood really like? I mean, because people have different visions of Hollywood. What is it really like? Someone, because you live there.
I live right in West Hollywood.
Right.
Yeah. My favorite thing about LA was the beach. Venice Beach was my favorite. I got there every chance I had, every chance I could get. The work-wise, you know, I tell people when you go to LA from here, when you go to New York from here, you got to go and get in a line. Regardless of what kind of talent you have, you still got to get in that line. You still got to apply for it. You still got to beg for it. You still got to keep going and going after it. They don't open their arms welcomely when you come there, not at all. But my brother was there when I moved there.
Okay.
He had already, we had a friend who was in a singing group, and I managed them when I first moved there so that I could have some money. And then I found out other people that I knew were there doing movies. So I just went to them and knocked on the door, and I just got the jobs. And I was hired as an assistant coordinator for Waiting to Exhale, and went to Arizona for that. And that was fabulous. Whitney, she was so cool. It was a lot of fun, so I enjoyed that.
So is it all the glitz and glamour that like we see on TV? Is that real or is that fabricated?
That's TV.
That's TV.
That's TV. You work your tails off because there's so many other people in that line waiting on that same job. And when I first moved there, Filofax, remember Filofax? They were
right.
in. Everybody had a Filofax and a bottle of water, and they were on the bus. Everybody was on their way to an audition. Everybody. And I don't mean every single solitary little person there, but that's the bulk of what people do. They're waiting for an audition. You talk to someone in Hollywood, oh yeah, I had an audition with so-and-so. I did this movie, I did that movie. So it's kind of a working person's place, but you got to get in that line. I don't care how much you know, you got to get in that line.
I want to take a look at a clip that you cast, the Antoine Fisher story. And we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Let's take a look. Antoine Fisher.
Hey, boy, what you doing? I'm your Uncle Horace.
Get out the way, Horace. Come on, baby. Oh, look at you. I'm your Aunt Etta, baby. Oh,
I'm your cousin Jeanette. And I'm your Aunt Anna. How you doing, baby?
oh, Lord Jesus. Oh.
This is my wife, T.
How you doing? Good looking.
I'm your cousin Eddie. My dad named me after your father. It's my brother Ray. What's up, dog? What's cracking, man?
Hey, y'all, I'm your cousin Jason, man. What's up, man?
All right, boys, open up.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Come on, Eddie.
Now, I remember that film because at the time I was teaching at Glenville, and almost everybody I know that was a performer was went to audition for that piece.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit. Talk about working with Denzel Washington.
He was the coolest ever. And he would ask me my opinion, which just really floored me. You know, we'd be in a casting session and we'd have pictures on the table, and he said, well, what do you think about that person? Who do you think is the strongest actor? And I said, this one. He said, okay, let's go with this one.
Wow.
He was so professional. And I'll tell you a little short story. You know the scene at the end when the twins open the door to all the seniors?
Mm-hmm.
When we had wrapped, when they yelled, "Rap, it's done," everybody was on their way back to the trailer, and Denzel came up to me and tapped me on my shoulder and said, come with me, I've got something. I want to show you what you did. So we went to his trailer. He put that scene on. They had already edited that scene in the movie. So I'm sitting there watching the scene, and I glance over at him, and he's welling up. He's got tears in his eyes because that scene was so touching. And we had just done it a day or so before that. And that made me so proud that he was proud of it enough to tap me on my shoulder and say, come see what you did. And see, the people in that scene, the twins that opened the door, they went to my church. And I saw them in church one day, and they were kicking each other, punching each other, and the mother separated them. And I said, wow, they would be great in this movie. So when church was over, I approached his mother, and she said yes, and we brought them in for audition. And one thing Denzel did with the kids, all the kids in the auditions, he got down on his knees so that he was eye level with them. And the kids loved it. They did. It was just a fabulous experience working with him.
Ms. Lillian, how important is it, do you feel, for a casting director to prepare an actor for an audition? I mean, do you do that, or is it solely the actor's job to come in and audition?
No, I do that.
Okay.
I work with them. You know, like you see movies of casting directors casting people, and they come in, they say 3 words, they say, okay, thank you, we'll call you if we need you, or if, you know what I'm saying? I don't do that. Now, I've had some that are so bad that I just go along with them as far as I can, and then I thank them, and you know, and of course they don't get the job.
Right.
But if I see a light, if I see some talent there, I'll work with them. Because I know what the director's looking for, and I know what's inside these actors. I know what they have. I know what they come to the table with. So I work with them.
And you've also cast for theater for a long time. You cast for the Caramel House,
yes.
And you cast Ma Rainey.
Yes.
And I was in that I was in that production, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So, what is the difference between casting for a play versus casting for a film?
Not much, because you still need the talent. They still got to be good. And the thing about the theater, you know, when they're performing, there's no cut, let's redo that. There's none of that in a live performance. And I really like that. I like the closeness of the theater. I like that. And the difference is, the only difference that I know, that I see, is that in the theater you project. In the movies you don't, because you got the camera to project. But in the theater it's not, it's different. So I cast people out of the theater for movies. And I cast people from movies into the theater. And that's what I tell them. You know, for the theater, you project, you speak louder. That's the only difference that I see. The talent, you still got to have it.
And what did you think of the Ma Rainey production?
I thought it was fabulous. Everything that I have seen that I have been a part of and also not been a part of at Caramoo has just been incredible. I mean, there's a lot of young people who are out of Caramoo who are into film now, because it's a good track record to have that in your resume. And a lot of Hollywood directors come here and ask, does this person have theater trained? I'm looking for people who are theater trained, which is really an amazing feat, but a lot of them ask that.
And what is the ballpark, what is the general evaluation process that you use to determine whether an actor is the right person for a role?
If they make me think that they are who they're representing. You come in to read for a character. If you convince me that you're that character, then that's what I'm looking for. You've got to be that person. You've got to be that character. And that's a good actor to me.
Let's look at another film that Miss Lillian was responsible for casting, a clip of Judas and the Black Messiah. I had a lot of friends who also were in that film. Let's take a look and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I want to share something with you. Like the masses, I was in awe when I first laid eyes on all the things you are. I heard that speech. I knew we'd make noise. I just thought it'd be in the streets.
The Black Panthers are the single greatest threat to our national security. Our counterintelligence program must prevent the rise of a Black Messiah.
You're looking at 18 months for the stolen car, 5 years for impersonating a federal officer, or you can go home. What do you want? Get close to Hampton.
The Black Panthers are forming a rainbow coalition of oppressed brothers and sisters of every color.
Neutralize him by any means necessary.
America's on fire right now. And until that fire is extinguished, nothing else means a damn thing. Imagine what we could accomplish together. We can heal this whole city.
You ain't tell me it was gonna be like this. These ain't no terrorists.
We got a rat, man.
Does anybody else know about me?
No one knows your identity.
Are you sure?
We educate, we nurture, we feed, and we lobby. Perhaps we're here for more than just war with these bodies. We scream, and we shout, and we live by this anthem. But it's power to the people really worth their ransom.
When I dedicated my life to people, I dedicated my life.
You get to go out there and talk about dying a revolutionary death because you don't have another person growing inside your body.
Anywhere there's people, there's power.
Judas and the Black Messiah.
So what was the experience for working with that film? And that's a more recent film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Judas and the Black Messiah, they called me because they had already started and they had hired someone else. Why, I don't know, but at any rate, they hired someone else. Then they were not getting what they were looking for in the actors and in the extras, especially the extras, because there were so many, there were hundreds. So they brought me in because they wanted some flavor. Again, the flavor. And the big church scene, that's my flavor. I did that. And the scene with the Puerto Rican funeral, that's my flavor. And at the end, when it was all over and they came to me and they thanked me for bringing my flavor, but that's what they asked for. And that's what I brought.
And that's what you always try
That's
to
what
do.
I always bring. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite film that you were responsible for casting? That may be hard, because I know artists love everything they do. But give me a moment of pride when you sat in the audience and watched one of the films that you helped cast.
Antoine Fisher, that scene at the end with the seniors.
With the seniors.
That
okay.
was such a touching scene. And two or three of those seniors were not actors. They were seniors that I knew. And my father was in that scene.
Wow.
Because he needed some seniors for that. And I brought them all together. So that was really very touching for me. It really was. I mean, I was like Denzel. I was welling up when I watched it. It was because it was so touching. And I knew it was a film. I knew the cameraman was standing there taking the picture. So it was real. It was real. It really was. It was wonderful. And then there are other films. Wow. There's a lot of plays that I did that I liked. I love working plays. Black Nativity was off the hook. It was fabulous. You know, that talent. If you could stand there and open your mouth and sing a song and be in tune, I'm impressed.
I think by now, if someone came to you and said, Miss Lillian, I want you to cast this film, you could almost cast it right in your head with all the Cleveland talent
I
that's
absolutely
around,
can.
you know. And that makes me think about that imagination, that ability to create a scene or a total film right within your head, you know? I mean, I think that's what writers do, and I think casting directors have that same thing. Now, normally, will a director give you the script ahead of time, or how does that work?
Yes, I get the script immediately. I get the cast breakdown immediately. I get the extras breakdown immediately. So once I read the script, then I visualize who I want for what roles. Some people I know, some I don't. Sometimes I Facebook it. Sometimes initially when I first started casting, like a lot of the TV movies that I cast, we needed a lot of extras. So I used to do stuff on Channel 5 and 19 and 43. They'd have me on there talking about the movie, looking for extras. But like I'm doing a couple of projects now, and one's a short and one's a feature. I've opted not to go on Facebook, not to post it. I got people in my head. And my associates, they got people in their heads. So we just sit around and make a list and go over, okay, so-and-so would be good for that. And then I send them a personal note, or I call them and let them know what I want them to audition for. And now I have people self-tape. I'll give them the sides, self-tape, send it to me, and then I'll decide, if that's a good tape. If not, I'll help you do it again.
If you could have lunch with any actor or actress, who would it be?
Wow. Gordon Parks, but he's gone.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Gordon Parks was just the most even-tempered, mellow gentleman. He really was, and he was brilliant. And so many people, contested what he was doing, questioned what he was doing.
Sure, yeah.
And we know why.
Sure.
Which is so unfortunate. And I go through that right now to this day, and it's terrible. But he was a mellow guy.
Did he start out as a photographer? Yeah. Because I remember when I was in college, there were a lot of photographs, and it was by Gordon Parks, and then he went into film.
Yeah. And then, and he wasn't the only one. I could give you a long list. Mario Van Peebles, God rest his soul, he was great. I coordinated a film for him, a couple of films. And, New Jack City.
New Jack City, yeah.
His son directed that.
That's a legend.
And that was, oh my God, we had so much fun on that movie.
And you worked with Do the Right Thing with Spike Lee, right?
Yes. And on Do the Right Thing, I worked with Robbie Reed, who runs casting at BET now. She grew. Wardrobe, oh golly, her name left my brain. She won an Academy Award for Amistad. She won the Academy Award for costumes. She won the Academy, Ruthie Carter.
Oh, okay.
This was her first feature. She won the Academy for Black Panther. She's gonna get it again for this new Black Panther. We all started there together. Yeah, and they just went straight to the moon.
Wow. So you're originally from Cleveland, and then you just took off for New York then?
Yeah, I was born in Kentucky, and we moved here when I was little.
Okay.
And we lived in the projects on Woodland. That's when you have all kinds of neighbors, and it was a nice place. And they put us out because both my parents were working. So we went back to Kentucky, and we went to elementary school. My brother and I did. And we went to elementary school at the Black Catholic Church. The school was in the basement, and it was partitions. It was 3 rooms, and it was grades 1 through 9. And there was 3 grades in each section. And you had to keep up with the oldest in that section. So if I'm in the 6th grade and I'm in there with the 9th graders, I got to keep up with the 9th graders, which was very cool. You know, so when we moved here, we were all skipped because, you know, they were so far ahead. But we moved back to Cleveland. I was in I think 2nd grade, and then we stayed. And it was, you know, that was when it was fun. You know, we lived on Columbia off of between 102nd and East Boulevard. I went to Glenville. That's when you went to school in your neighborhood.
Right.
I went to Mount Standish, which was around the corner. I went to Empire. You could see it from my house.
Right.
And I went to Glenville. And a funny story about Glenville, I used to ride to school every day for 3 years with, they called him the boiler man. He was the man that came in the morning and turned the boiler on to heat up. And he was my neighbor. And he picked me up every morning. I get up at 6 o'clock. And I would come to school with him, and nobody be in school but me and him. I'd be in the lunchroom, and students start coming in. I'd do my homework in the morning.
Do you have a preference between TV series and just regular film? You know, the TV series is so big now. You got Raising Kanan, Ghost, Power, Queen of the South. Is there a preference for you? Or?
Not really. I just like casting. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a series, if it's a short, if it's an indie, it doesn't matter. You know, and now everybody's a filmmaker. And everybody can be a filmmaker.
Right.
You got an iPhone, you can be a filmmaker. You really can. That's why it's so easy now to do self-tapes, because you get the quality, you get a good quality from your cell phone. You can email it, you can text it with your cell phone. Everybody can be a filmmaker.
So now, what do you do when you're not casting? Has nothing to do with film. What are your hobbies? What are your quirks? What do you like to do?
I like to be around my family, my sister and brother. They're funny. They're a lot of fun. I've got some really close friends that I've been friends with since kindergarten. I like gathering with them. I like involving them in films when I can. Like my sister's a teacher, so I've hired her as a teacher for the films, because you need an on-set educator when you have kids a certain age, and they've got to keep up with their schoolwork. Like Antoine Fisher, she worked on Antoine Fisher. We had all those kids, and they brought in 2 teachers, my sister and one other. And my sister's worked on a lot of stuff. She worked on the Cotton Club in New York as a teacher. And then I have another friend who's a caterer, so I've hired her as a caterer. My brother, I have hired him as an extra. So I enjoy them a lot. I really do. You know, we've been through so much together. We've been through New York. When I moved to New York, I was by myself. Then they kind of filtered in. And we all grew up in New York together, and we experienced New York together. That was fun. It really was.
What would you say is the greatest challenge in facing a casting director today?
The biggest challenge is a finicky director that doesn't think you've got good talent here. And that happens often. And one of the first questions they ask me when they come, how is the talent pool here? It's excellent. We've got some fabulous actors in Cleveland. And they realize that once they see their auditions or once they book them in a movie, in a role, they see how good they are. And I mean, I cast dogs. I did a movie where I cast cows because they needed a certain breed of cows, you know, and sheep and fish. And, you know, you have to find people, and horses, and you have to find people who handle that. Like Antoine Fisher, you remember the crickets they poured out the jar down the little boy's back?
Right.
We hired a wrangler. There was a cricket wrangler who brought those crickets. We had to put them in a hotel and everything. Those were trained crickets. And I found them.
And you get the prize. So what's next for you, Ms. Lillian?
Right now, I'm working on 2 projects. One is a short and one is a feature. And there's an organization called Art of Me, and it's run by Stephanie Wahome Lassiter. And what it is, the program used to be called Scenarios, and it was for years here. And what it does is we have writing contests amongst young people. And whoever wins the contest, we write a script, we hire a director, and we make a movie. So that's what we're doing now. And it's so thrilling. It really is. And this time we extended it to seniors. So now we have a movie that seniors wrote. And it's really funny. It's about them going back in a time machine. You know, this is how they think. Or these writers, this is how they think. So we're producing it. We're making it into a movie. And it'll be at the film festival. It'll be in other areas. You know, it'll be in all the schools. The one that the kids wrote will be in the schools. So it's really a nice organization I like being a part of.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for being on my show.
This has been fun. It really has.
It's been incredible.
Thank you.
We're together again. I'd like to thank my special guest, casting director Miss Lillian Pyles, for hanging out with me today on Creative Focus. So that's it, Cleveland. We're out. But remember, a true artist is not only inspired, but inspires others. I'm Cornell Hubert Calhoun III for TV 20 and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.